On today's Minute of the Apes, we still want to know where that crane came from and what its purpose is.
Hello and welcome to Minute of the Apes, a daily podcast where we break down every minute of the Planet of the Apes movies, 1 minute at a time. I'm Todd. I actually made it through the opening in one take.
Time, yeah.
And because of that, I'm going to introduce Richard and Sean.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
We are on to minute 3 of Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Sean, what do you think? Hey, before you even tell me, what do you think so far? 2 minutes in, are you at least enjoying this one?
Well, actually, it was kind of like one of my notes. I wonder, was this first 3 minutes back when it was actually released, was it considered action-packed?
I'm sure it was.
It was just like people on the edge of their seats seeing helicopters come in and the army show up and all that kind of stuff.
We still have to think that this is before the day when typical B movies were A movies, you know, when they were releasing. Now when we release a superhero film or something like that all the time, this was back when this type of movie was seen as a way to make some quickie money, not something artistic. And so I'm sure to an extent this is the way things were staged. You had films in 71 that were, you know, a little more fastly paced.
French Connection or something like
French
that?
Connection. Exactly. You had those exact things. This was the year of the first Godfather film that if you go watch it, it's a very slowly paced film. It's just a different era. You were beginning to see some of the influence of the new guard coming into Hollywood, changing some of that. But I think you're absolutely right. I think this was something where they're like, this is exciting.
Yeah.
We talk about the kind of lack of tension in this setup in the first couple of minutes. And to a certain extent, also a lack of urgency between Red Baron 5 and the duty officer that he talks to. In the minute,
I just like
prior,
the fact you say duty.
The minute prior. So the end of the last minute when we see the caravan of Jeeps, and then in this minute where we see the helicopter land and the Jeeps line up and the military personnel all get out and run into a line with their rifles, is kind of the first moment of tension in my mind. It was like, why are we? I thought it was a rescue operation. Why are all the military showing up?
I did have a note here. Despite the calm attitude, the lining up of soldiers indicates that they weren't expecting the captain.
And were those modern rifles?
They are fairly modern rifles.
Okay.
Wait, they took all the wood padding off the Apes rifles and just gave it to the humans.
That's pretty much it. You know, they didn't bring in M16s, which you gun enthusiasts out there are going to get me wrong, but I believe was introduced around Vietnam or something like that. Was that kind of weapon? But they didn't have that. But still, would
you have gotten in a line like that around the beach?
It does feel very Civil War kind of aspect where they're lining up. You almost expect to see someone kneel before so they can load their muskets.
Attach
bayonets. An invading force to come forward. They're not behind any cover or anything like that. They're just kind of lined up along the beach. It was just kind of from what we got from the least, knowing what's happening in the script or what from the stuff they cut, and then knowing what we're seeing given now, it just seemed a little kind of okay. We're going there.
Well,
we're scared now
because we've got to do this. Minute 3 starts with us as viewers riding in the Jeep still and following the other 4 cars, and then ends with a helicopter landing.
And I promise I was going to get there. We'll listen to the movie in just a second, the minute in just a second, but it has an odd, again, sense of urgency when you show up with all these guys with guns when you've made no threat apparent.
Right.
When you've not said, I don't know what that is. You could even have somebody going, sir, really? Do we need men with guns? And he's like, do you know what's in there? You could have anything like that would at least set the stage. It's a little odd. So
we have life readings on board, but nobody's replying to
Well, they didn't even know it fell out of the sky. They're not going to know.
They just think it washed up on the beach.
Right. All right. So to be fair, let's listen to minute 3 of Escape from Planet of the Apes.
Sergeant, get that half-track down here and get a cable out to those frogmen. Yes, sir.
All right, as of minute 3, we have a planet's worth of humans. Planets worth planets. I can't.
We're at least a military planet at this point.
At least.
I mean, that's what we've seen to this extent. So, all right. Go ahead. We're battling to start. Go.
They were just in this minute, because there's nothing really that they can tell that's going on outside of some barking of commands.
Right.
The Jeeps, we come from the rear. They pull around kind of in a circle to come back face front, where they line up on the beach in front of what is the ship. They, the commanding officer tells them to get out, to hurry up, and they all get out and they go, ho, ho, they run in the line, and then they crank, a cable and pull the ship onto the beach with the frogmen that are sitting on it. So you probably could not hear that just from the audio, but that is what has happened in this minute.
So let's start right away with, we watched this minute together and I was just gooing over every shot in it, that these shots are so much smarter because all of the shots in the military, maybe save one or two, are canted angles, meaning that the camera slides itself a little bit to one side, and they
tilted a little bit.
If you've ever seen the classic '60s TV show Batman, they use canted angles all the time, and it gives an off-kilter feel. Now, what they do here is they're showing that the military is a little askew. That's something that's like urgency, and the camera can't even be flat. But what's even better is that Mr. Taylor has the action come across the frame in that canted angle, and then that Jeep turns towards so that they're right in the frame. It's very smart usage of the lens and many factors, composition and action-wise.
I have to say, to this point, they've shown pretty much every step of getting the ship. They had the helicopter fly in, they've radioed in, they've had the military show up. They don't show them taking the cable out to the frogmen. That's one step they don't show.
Yeah, so the commanding officer, what does he tell them? Where's my dialogue?
Get that cable
Everybody
out to the
out,
frogmen.
ho, ho, ho. Yeah. Those lines weren't actually in the script itself. They didn't have that direction being held. They basically just kind of have it shown and not actually spoken out loud. Yeah. So, Sergeant, get that something truck down here and get a cable out there to those frogmen. Yes, sir. We don't actually... Oh, that's in the next minute. No, that's this minute. Sorry. That's not actually in...
Yeah, the cable...
In the script itself. They do have, however, some back and forth in the script that we did not get. The deputy director, patiently, General Brody, I'm telling you, we have no spacecraft up. Brody, you're telling me that there was never, that what never went up can't come down. And I'm telling you it just has. And now I'm going to tell the president. And the military vehicles and combat marines, trucks and jeeps, et cetera, swarm the beach area. And then there's a call to the president.
Yeah, I don't think that was necessary. I mean, it almost sounds like a little kid talking to somebody. Well, I told you, and now I'm going to tell the president.
There is a little bit of that kind of thing, but I think that's also indicative of a 70s film. I think that we're seeing more of the era reflecting itself, that it's not slapstick, but it's a little played for a comedy beat of, we don't know what we're doing and we're out of our depth here.
I mean, there in the coming minutes, there's definitely an element of comedy that we don't necessarily get in this moment right here. They call the president. The president, an articulate, unruffled professional politician with a flair for irony, into the phone. President, let us hope and pray that you are right, General, but I think we should be alert to a remoter possibility that the Russians retrieved one of our missing spaceships and remanded one of our missing spaceships, leading the Taylor and Brent spaceships were missing, or other ones.
Yeah.
Remand it with astronauts who have now accidentally splashed down in our own territorial waters. If they're alive, you may tell Colonel Winthrop at El Palomar to come with them with caution. Whether they're out alive or not, have NASA go over that ship with whatever is the scientific equivalent of a fine-tooth comb. And until we know more, I want a full security clampdown on the entire operation. You understand me, General? This is not for the networks.
The Russian commandeering thing, that's a cool twist to it. And that could have even been on a radio in the background that, General ignores or tells them to turn down. I think you could have thrown those in anywhere.
Yeah. I do like Dane's taking the beginning of the astronauts moving in, and I do like this conversation with the president and the stuff that goes back and forth a little bit that's not in the script or said at all. I mean, we have minimal dialogue at this point. Right. I do think Dane's thought through a lot of the stuff that he thought through so much stuff that I would have loved to have seen some more of this in there.
Okay, so now thinking about the first two movies and the cut dialogue about missing ships, I can see where if Taylor was going to, and the first ship was going to check on a star, they're following it, it hits that curve, Hassline curve, and disappears.
Right.
All right. Then we send Brent out to find Taylor, and his ship disappears too. And that's when we're going, hey, maybe the Russians took one of our missing ships.
I think that's a very interesting idea. I don't see why you don't at least
say that. Say, hey,
Put a little something in it.
Our first ship disappeared. Our second rescue ship disappeared too. Maybe the Russians took it, and that's what this is.
You could build a whole scene. You could have people questioning that, on that beach, and the general tells them to shut up, which establishes all the questions and things we're all wondering what's true, but it also gives the general a moment of power where he can tell them, shut up, deal with the situation, anything like that. I just wish they'd teased it a little.
Maybe it's something they didn't have. We know that they shot the opening scene that was scrapped with the astronauts. There are still images of the 3 astronauts in the cockpit.
Mm-hmm.
We know that they shot it. We know the footage was scrapped, and as far as we know, completely lost. We don't know that they shot these moments with Brody and the deputy director and the president. But if they had, they could have easily just had lifted 1 or 2 of these lines in a conversation and put that in there to make that
absolutely.
happen.
I know for a fact that Kim Hunter talks about, number one, that stuff that was shot in the space capsule. She says, I don't necessarily remember it, but I do remember I think she said, I do remember that they had assembled a set for the inside of the spaceship, and I remember that. Now, she could be evasive in that way because they told her at that time to not talk about that footage. They didn't keep footage as much in those days. I have seen some comments that perhaps because of the 50th anniversary of the film series that they may be releasing some unseen footage. So who knows, maybe we'll at least get some stills of that. There's talk of a new box set coming out. Obviously, they want to make money, and I don't blame them. They've got a great property. But in that, they may have some unreleased scenes. So maybe we'll see some footage or some pictures or something.
Yeah, maybe. So the tow line, the winch comes out, gets onto the ship. And I just love how casual the 2 frogmen are just kind of casually
hanging out
hey,
there.
Cooler being
We don't ever see it hooked on the ship, though, right?
That's what I was saying.
We don't see it
that's the
taken
one
out.
step they never show us is taking the cable out there.
Which everything has been so literal to that point. And I don't ever mind, especially because we hear someone say attach tow cable and bring it in. Mm-hmm. I don't care if I don't see that. Now, that's also a 2-second shot maybe where you see somebody going out, as Richard plays the movie, as we see somebody going out with the cable, hook it on, and done. But still, we didn't get that payoff.
No.
So 50 seconds into this minute is when we have the reverse of the helicopter coming down onto the beach, and all of a sudden, mysteriously, there is a giant red crane on the beach that is not falling into the sand. We don't know how it got there. We never saw it.
Doesn't seem to be doing anything.
It was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah,
it is. And I want to backtrack to that shot because I have that 250 mark when that helicopter flies in top right of the frame.
Right.
Is a beautifully composed shot once again that has action that leads us down to the moment, and it's actually what leads your eye to that crane. But when you see it, you're like, that's like a construction crane. What's going on? And how do you get cranes onto a very sandy beach?
Without it sinking, yeah.
Right, and how do you get the crane off of the very sandy beach, especially when it's obviously going to lift something very heavy?
Well, then so my first thought, because the crane did kind of surprise me, my first thought was, why was that truck able to tow the ship in without being dragged back out with itself? Right,
Sure.
It didn't seem like it was sturdy enough to be able to pull a ship in. So my first thought was
it's
that
built
what
Jeep tough?
Was that what the crane was meant to do? And then I'm like, no, wait. The crane is probably there to hoist the ship onto the back of a flatbed truck, but the flatbed truck is not
there,
seen yet. So it was this. So it almost, you know what it felt like to me? It felt like they used that crane to get the ship out in the water. And they're like, we have this prop.
Just leave it there.
Put it in the shot.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised by that. And that's, that's at least practicality of we're doing a production. Leave it in the frickin' shot.
Yeah.
And we saw so many times last time that they sort of escaped things, and the best thing that we could figure is they didn't want to waste the time in production to do it. Here they basically said make it a part of the moment.
You were talking about the Jeep pulling the capsule in. I remember in Boy Scouts getting a life-saving badge, and basically if you're on ground and somebody's in water, you will always have a better position because all you do, you're not supposed to, if you're close enough that you can give a pole to somebody, you're not supposed to jump in and save them because potentially they will grab onto you and sink you.
True.
If you hand them a pole, you just pull them in because water doesn't give the same resistance that standing on ground does.
And when you're buoyant, you're against the force that water exerts against it is less than what your feet do against sand. So therefore
easy
you
for
have
me to pull it in. So the Jeep, still fighting against the tide.
I know
and
our
everything.
physics people out there are probably
Okay,
going, "No,
losing
Todd,
their
this is how
mind.
you say it." But that's
They're
essentially
screaming at the
concept
podcast right now.
But that's essentially the concept. They're in water, so it does make it lighter enough to bring it in.
So there is so once we get past these couple of minutes, everything else kind of flows with the script, but all the stuff that was cut is definitely very obvious. So when they mention the spacecraft being towed ashore by a cable attached to a truck winch, frogmen swimming alongside, shout orders to truck on beach. We then jump to the inside of the cockpit, and we were supposed to have astronaut 2 saying we're being pulled. They're supposed to hear the frogman's voice outside. How